تخشون أحدا إلا الله وكفى بالله حسيبا. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. والذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم والذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. تحيتكم يوم يلقونه سلام وأعد لهم أجرا كريما. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا. ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Salawat dong pelantar.
Salam. Salam alaikum. There is no life without Hussein. How can we live without Hussein? Our holy land is Karbala. The whole world is with Zahra. There is no life without Hussein. There is no life without Hussein. Salawat.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All these days have come for me to return. With your grief now my heart will burn. All these days I kept aside. My tears I will no more hide. Your name is an arrow to my heart when I sin. How can the heart be made to carry within passion for this dunya and your love between? Slam all my desires, keep me away from the fire. To be like you I aspire, with your love take me higher. For your lips dry, heaven's sky, yet these men they have come to slay, to make orphans of your children. Had I been there, how'd I fare? Am I being true? Would I help you, or would I be tempted to flee? Hussein, you know what my eyes show, every tear in your honor. Every day when I am lost, call out to you, be my host. Write my name among the trustees, let me drink from your beauty. With millions at your door, my allegiance is for sure. When I quiver in my goals, to your dome, guide my soul. O Father of Sakina, I have nothing but my tears. My heart's breaking for your daughter. And what will happen to her? Soon the tent will be raided, fires burning in their hatred. And the sun is drowning in shame. As they light the flame, gone is the alamdar, waiting for them the bazaar. As the daughter of Ali prayed it freely, O my beloved Mazloom, your pain is too much to bear. Will you allow me to share in your love? Will you take my tears? I am too late. Helping you was not in my fate. But your message lives on, always in my actions, forever. I hope to come, see you, pay respect to the 72. I hope each day I walk your way, when around me evil seem. Like you I stand, not giving my hand. Evil I fight, be my light, be the light. Hussein, show me how to be free. Follow your way every day. لبيك يا حسين. بن محمد وأهل بيت محمد صلوات.
So these kids showed their love to Allah, to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family by reciting Quran and poetry in this month of Muharram. Let's motivate them by reciting another salawat. حسین قافلت نیت سفر دارد تو می روی و خدا از دلت خبر دارد برای بدرقه ام البنین آمده است بجای مادرتان دست بر کمر دارد مسیرتان زیاد است و دخترت کوچک برای دختر تو این سفر خطر دارد برای قاسم از اینجا زره ببر آقا برای پیکر او سنگ ها شرر دارد میان قافله جا که هست با زینب بگو که چادر و معجر اضافه بردارد بیا حسین عوض کن تو ساربانت را گمان کنم که به انگشترت نظر دارد بیا برای خودت هم کفن بخر آقا ثواب دارد حسین جان کجا ضرر دارد که بر حبیب خدا ختم انبیا صلوات و سربریده صحرای کربلا بلند صلوات. Please welcome Dr. Shakil Virji to the member with a loud salawat.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Can I please ask the youngsters who are sitting on the chairs, please come and sit in front here, because this majlis, inshallah, is specifically addressed to you guys. So please don't sit over there, come up front, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين واللعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته صلوات صل على قال حسين بن علي عليه السلام وإني لم أخرج أشيرا ولا بترا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما وإني خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن أمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر وأسير سيرة جدي وأبي علي بن أبي طالب صلوات محمد وآله. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The season of Muharram has begun. As we would say in Farsi, and I'll try and say it, Mausam Aza Mah Muharram Shuru Mi Shawad. As of today, we are entering into the season of the observance of the lamentations, of the reflections, of the thinking about what happened in the tragedy of Karbala, not for the sake of telling stories, not for the sake of entertainment, but for the sake of, number one, recognizing how true servants and true representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behave in times of extreme difficulty, and for you and I to extract some lessons from these episodes and figure out how we can apply it in our lives. Many ahadith talk about the benefits, jazakallah. You will find many traditions that talk about the fazilat, the high ranking of why the observance of azadari during these 2 months and how it benefits you and I. You will hear traditions that say, for example, that crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, each drop of tear can be a cause of the forgiveness of our sins. These are in some of the traditions. Going to Karbala, especially during certain times, is equivalent, the sawab of it is equivalent to 1,000 hajjis and 1,000 umrahs, for example. Every step a person takes to go to Karbala, whether it is walking during Arba'in or any other time, each step, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has angels praying for the person that's doing the walking. Now, these are not exaggerations. And for you and I, we need to figure out why are these high status type of traditions associated with Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, that we spend almost 2 months in this season of Muharram of remembering the tragedy of Karbala. These kind of commemoration we do not even apply for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This is not to diminish the status of Rasulullah. This is by no means saying that Rasulullah doesn't deserve that. No. Rasulullah is more deserving. Okay, but there is something special about Abdullah al-Hussein. And this is what I want to try whenever we get the opportunity to come and lecture, to try and focus on, especially for our youngsters, to try and understand. Because listen, in these next 2 months, there's going to be a lot of investment of time and money and resources, okay, not only in this center, centers all over the world. 400 million Shias are sitting down in this platform of Muharram all over the world. Okay, and this investment needs to be understood, because one thing is for sure, and I'll come to that if azadari for any reason stops, the madhab of Islam is in danger. And you and I need to understand why. So we'll come to that. I began with a statement that was cited as a wasiyah to Muhammad Hanafiya. Muhammad Hanafiya was a stepbrother of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam was leaving Medina to go towards Makkah, Muhammad Hanafiya comes to him. And I'll get into the details of the story in just a moment, and says, Ya Abdullah, why are you leaving? Where are you going? What's happening? And there is a discussion between them. Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells Muhammad Hanafiya, I'm leaving for a purpose. But in this testament, a written testament that he left with Muhammad Hanafiya, he lays out his plan. And he makes it very clear what he is going to do. وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجُ عَشِيرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا. I am not leaving because I want to create a revolution. This is not a political fight. I'm not trying to become a king or a ruler. I'm not trying to create any kind of sedition in the government that exists there. So that's not my purpose. I am not trying to do any kind of zulm. I am not trying to spread corruption in the community. That's not the purpose. I'm not trying to create any kind of division in the Muslim Ummah. I am not also trying to promote myself. That's not my purpose. I'm not trying to let the people know that I am Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of the Prophet, and I need to be recognized. That's not the purpose. I am not trying to create any kind of oppression or tyranny in this society. What is my purpose? His purpose is وَإِنِّي خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحَ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. I'm leaving Medina to go, and my purpose is to reform, to create reformation, because this thing has been damaged. Islam has been damaged. I'm going out to create reform of the Ummati Jaddi, of the nation of my father, my grandfather. Okay? أريد أن أمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. I'm going out to enjoin good, and I'm going out to encourage others to not do evil, to stay away from sin, to stay away from wrongdoing. وأسير سيرة جدي وأبي Ali ibn Abi Talib. And I'm leaving here so that I can basically produce the seerah and teach people the seerah of Rasulullah and the seerah of my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's my purpose. I'm not trying to create any kind of a political, this is not a political movement. Now, keeping this in mind, let us dwell into what happened for the time that passed by, and the event of Karbala became what it became. For this, we need to go back in history and go during the time of the demise, of the death of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, this is a period that is a long time between the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the time when Karbala happened. There's a huge span of time that goes by. I can't get into everything, but I'm going to highlight what happened. The first thing that happened when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, there were only maybe 6, maybe 8 people that were involved in the burial arrangement, and the influential Muslims went out and started plotting about who is going to be the successor of Rasulullah. Now, a lot of things happened, but I want to point out to you guys the arguments that were being produced by those people who claimed that they are the ones who deserve to succeed Rasulullah. What were they claiming? We are from the Quraysh. They were claiming tribal relationships. They were claiming clan relationships. They were saying, we are the Muhajir. We came with Rasulullah. Others were saying, no, we are the Ansar. We deserve it more because we helped Rasulullah. Nobody was claiming that we have taqwa, we have ilm, we have knowledge, and by virtue of that, we deserve to be the successors. It was a drive for power. It was a drive to see who could become the most powerful person. And what happened at Saqifa, which is where these people were gathered, and they were having this discussion, a person was nominated, and he became the first caliph of the Muslims. Abu Bakr as-Siddiqi, according to, the way that he's referred to. He became the first caliph. Meanwhile, the family of the Prophet, including Imam Ali alayhi salam, were involved in the burial arrangements of the Prophet. So this is how things started to roll off. When Abu Bakr was ready to leave this earth, he appointed the second caliph. He appointed Umar ibn Khattab. He became the second caliph. And then when Umar ibn Khattab was ready to leave this world, he organized a small committee of about 6 people, and he said that these people will choose the third caliph. And this committee got together, and after some deliberation, Uthman bin Affan became the third caliph. So this whole event, this whole series of events took about 25 years to occur. During this time, and I need you to pay attention to that, because one of the things that a lot of young people ask, because they accept the argument that, look, we, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, are in the minority. The others are in the majority. It's a complete fact. We form a very small percent. We are in the minority, maybe 20% of the whole Muslim population. And somebody can come and say, listen, there's something wrong with what you guys are doing, because if you were right, you should be in the majority. The answer to that, my dear brothers and sisters, is not related to the ideological arguments that, how we came, what kind of Islam is being followed here. It's because of what happened historically. The biggest conquest and expansion of the Muslim empire happened when? Does anybody know? What was the time period when the Muslim empire spread the most? It was during the time of the second caliph, during the time of Umar ibn Khattab. That's when it happened. So the Muslims who lived in Medina and who had come from Mecca, that span of 23 years, they knew who Ahlul Bayt was. They knew Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. They knew the family of the Prophet. They knew Fatima to Zahra salamullahi alayha. They knew the close companions of the Prophet. But as this conquest was occurring, armies of the Muslims were being sent out, and the Muslim empire was starting to spread. It went into, the areas of northern Africa, into Egypt, into Palestine, into Jordan, even Persia. The Persian Empire, or the early Muslims in Persia, including Afghanistan, were not Shias. If you look at 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century, at the time, they're all Sunnis. There was no Shiaism at that time. Shiaism came back later on. That's the historical fact. But the thing is, as the expansion were occurring, a person who lived in Egypt and had accepted Islam had no idea what the Muslim atmosphere was in Medina. They didn't know Ahlul Bayt. They knew the Islam of the second caliph. They knew the Islam of the first caliph, even because he was the one who was recognized. And they, of course, knew Rasulullah. But what happened in the Battle of Badr, what happened in the Battle of Uhud, all of these things just became like, sideline information. Nobody knew what was going on. So a lot of them who never even visited Medina were accepting an Islam that was being spread by the second caliph and then later on by the third khalifa. And that's how you find that the vast majority of the Muslims in North Africa, in the areas of Jordan, Palestine, and other places, are the Sunnis. The school of Ahlul Bayt is a very, very small population. That started to come into play later on, and inshallah, if we have time, we'll get into that. So understand that the fact that we are in a minority is only because how things happen in history, not because of the ideological principles of Islam. So that's fact number one. So anyway, so the 25 years went by. The third caliph was the caliph, and then when he was murdered, Uthman bin Affan was murdered, people came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and they said, Ya Ali, Abu Turab, it's time for you now to take over the reins of Islam. Imam Ali alayhi salam accepted it hesitantly. He put some conditions on that, and I don't want to get into details of that. But finally, he accepted that, okay, and he took over the reins of being the fourth caliph of the Muslim people. For us, he's our first imam. There's no question about it. But imamat and khilafat are two separate things. This is a political leader. He's the leader of a government, of the Muslim empire. Whereas imamat is the religious, the spiritual guide, the religious guide, the religious leader. That's a big difference between them. And those people who were close to Imam Ali alayhi salam, continue to follow the teachings of Imam Ali alayhi salam. The problem though, that when Imam Ali alayhi salam became the Khalifa, he had a lot of opposition. Because by then, by assignments from the second caliph and the third caliph, the Banu Umayyah, or people from the Banu Umayyah, were placed in very important positions, positions of governorships, powerful positions in the government, all across the Muslim empire. And one of the people that was placed in extremely high position, was given the governorship of Syria, was who? Muawiyah. Okay, and Muawiyah had no other intention except to go and reign power within himself. So Imam Ali alayhi salam now is the caliph, Muawiyah is the governor of Syria. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, during his 4 years when he was the Khalifa, he tried to change the positions in different places and try to bring more God-fearing people into positions of power. When it came to Muawiyah, he faced resistance. And Muawiyah had gathered an army in Syria, and when we hear about the Battle of Siffin, okay, it is a battle between Muawiyah's army and the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam for this very reason. And there's a lot of little fine details that we can talk about the Battle of Siffin, and I just want to keep on going forward because that's not the purpose here. But understand that there was rivalry between Muawiyah and Imam Ali alayhi salam. In this process, a third group emerged, the Kharijis. At the end of the Battle of Siffin, there was this third group that developed, who basically also ended up going against Imam Ali alayhi salam. So the environment in Iraq, because Imam Ali alayhi salam moved the capital of the Islamic Empire, he moved it out of Medina and he brought it into Kufa. That's where he was basically ruling from. That's where he was gathering his army from. That's where all the confrontations were taking place. We all know what happened on the 19th of Ramadan and subsequently on the 21st of Ramadan when Imam Ali is at about 40 Hijrah. What happened? Imam Ali alayhi salam was attacked by one of these Kharijis, the third emerging group, and he was assassinated. But at that time, he left who? Imam Hassan to become the next caliph, the next ruler of the Muslim empire. How long do you think the reign of Imam Hassan alayhi salam lasted for? Roughly about 6 months. Because the rivalry then between Muawiyah and Imam Ali that existed now got transferred to Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Today, there are people who say, Kufi la yufi, that the people of Kufa are never to be relied upon. Why? Because when Imam Hassan alayhi salam was trying to gather an army to resist against Muawiyah, the people of Kufa basically betrayed him. And Imam Hassan alayhi salam was forced to sign a treaty with Muawiyah. Now here again, we need to start distinguishing between two things. One is power of the Muslim empire, and the second one is the maintenance, the propagation of the deen of Rasulullah. These are two separate things. And the Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, Imam Hassan, Imam Ali alayhi salam, okay, their focus was to maintain the madhab. The deen of Rasulullah needed to be maintained. Whereas those who were rivals against Imam Ali and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam were only searching for power. And that's what they basically wanted. Up until Imam Ali alayhi salam became the Khalifa, the basic tenets of Islam were at least being maintained. Because even our Sunni brothers refer to the first 4 caliphs as Khulafai Rashidun, meaning that the 4 caliphs who were rightly guided. So they acknowledge up to that extent. By saying that, they're also acknowledging that what happened after these 4 caliphs is something that is questionable. Muawiyah wanted to rule. Muawiyah wanted to rule the Muslim empire. He wanted basically to become the Khalifa. And for that reason, he started to create a war-type environment. He started to bribe people. He started to kill people, those who were in his opposition, and created a huge mess and huge chaos for both, at the time of Imam Ali, for him, as well for Imam Hassan alayhi salam. To the extent that one of the cousins of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, who was the commander of the army that Imam Hassan alayhi salam was gathering, was bribed by Muawiyah, and the night that they were supposed to attack or they were supposed to defend Islam, this man, Abdullah ibn Abbas, basically went out of the army of Imam Hassan alayhi salam and joined the ranks of Muawiyah. This was the situation that Imam Hassan alayhi salam was facing. He was forced to sign this treaty with Muawiyah and basically give up the Khilafat to Muawiyah. So we go now and we start looking at what was inside this treaty that Imam Hassan signed with Muawiyah. One of the things was that stop the killing of the Shias. That was one of the things that was there. There was another thing that was there, that stopped the cursing of Imam Ali during the khutbahs of Jummah. Muawiyah had gone to the extent, his rivalry with Imam Ali was such that even during the Jummah khutbah, you know, like when we go up and we recite salawat and we recite all of this, we recite all the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we recite salutations to Ahlul Bayt, Muawiyah, part of the beginning of the khutbah of the Jummah was cursing Imam Ali alayhi salam. So one of the things that was inside the treaty that Imam Hassan signed with Muawiyah was stop this, stop it immediately. But the most important thing that Imam Hassan signed with Muawiyah was, listen, when you die, the Khilafat, the Caliphate should be returned back to the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, to us. And we will then continue from there. This is the only period for which I am abdicating my position to make you the Khalifa, to stop this war, to stop this bloodshed that is going on around. That's the reason why Imam Hassan signed, because not signing the treaty was leading to a lot of bloodshed. So he signed this treaty to stop all of that and said, now, when you become the Khalifa, but when you die, the Khilafat will come back to us again. During the Khilafat of Muawiyah, especially during the last days, Muawiyah was really persistent on one thing, and that he wanted his son Yazid to succeed him. He even went to some of the more influential Muslims of those times, and he went and addressed them and says, you know, this is my plan, that I want to make Yazid, you know, my successor. And he faced a lot of oppositions, believe it or not. You know, the personality of Sa'd bin Waqas, in one narration that Sa'd bin Waqas was the father of Umar Sa'd, the commander of the army of Yazid. Muawiyah even went to him, and Sa'd bin Waqas said, are you crazy? You know, there are some narrations that say that Muawiyah created the murder of Sa'd bin Waqas. There is another personality also that was killed because of that, according to some narrations. Now, you know, when you look at history, there are so many different versions. You know, some say this, but I'm just trying to create and trying to, you know, paint a very broad picture to contextualize for you, so you and I can understand why Karbala happened and why Imam Hussein alayhi salam did what he did. So Muawiyah went to a personality, his name was Abdullah bin Abu Bakr, the son of Abu Bakr, and said that this is my plan. It is said that Abdullah bin Abu Bakr also opposed. He refused. And he ended up getting poisoned by Muawiyah, and he was killed. And there are other personalities that are named that Muawiyah tried to influence. And Muawiyah realized that if I want to make Yazid my successor, it's not going to happen by consent from the large population over here. It's going to have to be in some other way. So the time came, Muawiyah became very, very sick. And he was on his deathbed, you know. And he tried to inform the people that I want Yazid to become the successor, you know, after me. He writes to Yazid, or he leaves a wasiyah to Yazid, that the hindrance or the thing that is going to stop you from becoming the next caliph, or the only way for you to become a proper caliph with a strong influence amongst the people, you have to get allegiance from at least these three people. And he mentions the three people. One was Abdullah bin Umar, the son of Umar Khattab. The other one was Abdullah bin Zubair, okay, the son of a person, you know the story of Talha and Zubair, you know those people there. So Abdullah bin Zubair was, you know, Zubair was the father of this Abdullah that's been talked about. He said, get his allegiance. And he says, most importantly, get allegiance from Hussein ibn Ali. His allegiance is going to be very important. If you don't get his allegiance, you're going to have a problem. Muawiyah dies. And when he dies, Yazid is nowhere to be found. He was out hunting somewhere. When he gets a notice from someone that your father had died, so he comes into Damascus, and he stands in front of the people, and he delivers a speech about what he's going to do. And he was at least able to give a speech to influence the Syrians to side with him. And when he had consolidated power in Syria, he sends a messenger to Medina, and a message to the governor of Medina to the name of the guy. His name was Walid ibn Utbah. He was the governor of Medina at that time. So this letter comes. Now, Yazid was known. This is not something that only the Shias say. Okay, these are in the books Al-Tabari and so many other Sunni sources and non-Shia sources and non-Muslim sources. When they talk about the personality of Yazid, he was an open drunkard, an open womanizer. He had nothing to do with Islam. In fact, he has been known to say that there was no revelation that came to Muhammad. There was no risalah. There was no question about Rasulullah being the prophet. And he says that this was a game that the Banu Hashim created so that they can consolidate power over the Muslim people. These are the words of Yazid at one point in time. لا وحي جاء ولا ملك جاء. There was no angels that descended. This is what Yazid had said. So Yazid sends this slave to Medina, and he says that, find the audience of Walid ibn Utbah, who was the governor of Medina at the time, knock on his door, and give him this letter specifically. So this guy goes, and he arrives into Medina. The news about the death of Muawiyah had not reached Medina yet. This was just the beginning now. This slave comes, and he goes to Medina, knocks at the house of the governor. Servant comes out. He says, I need to speak with the governor. So the servant says, he's retiring inside in his inside chambers. He's not available to speak to. The guy insisted. Says, no, I have a letter from royalty. I have a letter from, Yazid. I need to speak to him. So he went, and he woke up Walid ibn Utbah, and he came, and he read the letter. And in this letter, I'll read, there were, again, many versions, but the main thing that was inside the letter, it says, Muawiyah has died. The Amirul Mu'mineen of the Muslims now is Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and I want you to take the allegiance of Hussein ibn Ali and Abdullah bin Zubair. In some letters, Abdullah bin Umar is mentioned, and others are mentioned. But these were the two main people that are mentioned in most of the letters. And if they refuse, the letter says, cut their heads off and send the head to me. The instructions from Yazid. Now, Walid ibn Utbah is reading this letter. His hands start to shake. He's killed the grandson of the Prophet. This was not an easy task. So he calls Marwan ibn Hakam, who he and Marwan basically were changing position of the governorship based on whatever Muawiyah and these guys were thinking. At this time, Walid ibn Utbah was the governor, and Marwan, he was the sideline for this. But he knows politics. Marwan ibn Hakam becomes one of the caliphs of the Banu Umayyah later on. But at this point, he was an advisor to Walid ibn Utbah, and he is summoned inside the house of the governor. Walid ibn Utbah turns to Marwan and he says, "Ya Marwan, there is a letter from Yazid, and this is what he's saying I have to do." So Marwan reads the letter, and he says, it's middle of the night. He says, call them now. Ask them to come right at this minute to the governorship and ask them for their allegiance. But he must say, in the middle of the night, he said, no. This is the only chance you have. Get them before the people of Medina come to know about the news of Muawiyah's death. So Walid ibn Utbah agrees. He sends somebody. It so happened that one narration says that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in Masjidun Nabawi, probably reciting namaz at-tahajjud. And I'm guessing that. That's not in the riwayat, but early in the morning, what would Imam Hussein alayhi salam been doing in the masjid? And Abdullah bin Zubair was also with him at the time. So the person comes, Ya Aba Abdullah, Walid ibn Utbah has summoned you to go to his palace right now. So Imam Hussain said, okay, go, I'll come. So him and Abdullah bin Zubair are having this discussion. Abdullah bin Zubair is saying, what do you think? What's going on? Imam Hussain says to him that I can surmise from what's happening that Muawiyah has died and Yazid has become the next caliph, or at least trying to become the next caliph, and he wants our allegiance. And that is why we are getting summoned to go to the governor's mansion. So Abdullah bin Zubair said, Ya Aba Abdullah, what are you going to do? Are you going to go? Imam Hussain says, of course I'm going to go. But I'm not going to go like this. So he goes back home and he gets the youngsters of the Banu Hashim, Abul Fadl al-Abbas, Ali al-Akbar, and other young people from his family. He says, we're going to the governor's mansion. This is in the middle of the night again. Ya Aba Abdullah, why are we going? He says, I just need you guys to come with me as my companions as I go to the house. And when they reach the door of the house of the governor, Imam Hussain alayhi salam turns to the young people of Banu Hashim and he says to them, listen, I'm going to go inside by myself and I will have a whatever discussion. If I come out, we go back home again. But if you hear a rising voice, or if you hear that there is some kind of chaos or some kind of noise going on inside, immediately come inside. So the young men of the Banu Hashim, right, their swords were sheathed inside their sheaths and they were waiting outside. And Imam Hussain alayhi salam walks in and goes to where Walid ibn Utbah was sitting. He said, Ya Walid, summoned me at the middle of the night. What's going on? I'm making this up. Obviously, these are not the words Imam Hussain alayhi salam was using, but just to create, a version of this. So Walid ibn Utbah hands him the letter and says, this is the letter from Yazid, and he's asking for your allegiance. Imam Hussain alayhi salam turns to him and says, why you want to ask me for allegiance right now in the middle of the night? Let's discuss this tomorrow. When we go out and you are seeking the allegiance from the people of Medina, ask me at that time, and then we'll see what happens. Marwan, who is sitting there, he intervenes in this discussion. Says, no, Walid, he has to give it right now. If he doesn't, chop his head off. Immediately, Imam Hussain turns around to Walid to Marwan, and he says to him, oh Marwan, who are you to intervene in this discussion, and what is your status, when you're talking about killing me for not paying this allegiance? He raises his voice. And immediately, the young men of the Banu Hashim storm into the governor's mansion. Their swords are out, and they are ready to defend Imam. They surround Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So Walid ibn Utbah now is overpowered. And he says, we can't do anything. So they leave. The Banu Hashim and Imam Hussain alayhi salam leave. Marwan turns to Walid and he says, this was the only opportunity that you had of taking the head of Imam Hussain. After this, he's not going to come into your hands. You're not going to be able to do anything with him. Walid ibn Utbah. Now, when you read narrations, Walid ibn Utbah did not want to participate in the killing of Imam Hussain. That's what they say. But he was very hesitant about this. He said, well, whatever has happened, has happened. Imam Hussain alayhi salam basically walks out and he goes back to his, to his dwelling. Now, he basically had made some statements, even while he was in Medina, that he was definitely not going to give allegiance to Yazid. One of the statements, he says that a person like me will never give allegiance to a person like Yazid. Question: did Imam Hussain alayhi salam have the opportunity to back off from this? Because not giving allegiance to Yazid means what? Certain death. Because he's going to send his army behind him. There is no escape from there. Wherever he goes within the Arabian Peninsula or anywhere out there, Yazid is going to send his army. But Imam Hussein al-Salam had become completely adamant that I am not going to give allegiance to Yazid. So he gathers his family and basically sets the plan to leave Medina and head towards the Makkah, a discussion for another time. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is faced on the next day when he was walking the streets in Medina. Marwan, the guy that he met the night before, he goes to Imam Hussein and says, take my advice, Abu Abdullah. Give allegiance to Yazid. Because if you don't, you know what's going to happen to you. And because of you, there is going to be a lot of bloodshed in the Muslim nation. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, how does a person, like coming back to the same statement, how does a person like me, accept a person like Yazid to rule over the Muslim empire and become the representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So this does not, behold me, at all. And what has happened to the Muslim empire right now, to the doctrines of Islam right now, needs to change. Because people were falling for Yazid. People had fallen for Muawiyah, and now they are falling for Yazid. And if Yazid is going to start leading the prayers in Masjid al-Nabawi and wherever else, he becomes the representative of the Muslim Ummah, and whatever he does becomes the Sunnah of the Muslim people. And there was no way Imam Hussein alayhi salam was going to accept that. But again, Imam Hussein alayhi salam wanted to make sure that the bloodshed did not occur in Medina. So the only way to escape from this is to take his family and head out towards Mecca, because by Quranic verdict, by traditions of Rasulullah, we are not supposed to kill even an ant or even an insect once you are inside the haram of Mecca. This is one of the rules that all of the Muslims do. Forget about the grandson of the Prophet. Even an insect is haram to kill when you are in the precincts of the haram of Mecca. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam says that at least I will get some protection over there, and he decides basically that that's where I'm going to go. The mission of Imam Hussein now and the beginning of the tragedy of Karbala, begins from this point on. And we'll get to the next level, inshallah, at the next lecture. I want to come down in conclusion and just say something. If we look at the story of the tragedy of Karbala in its entirety, everything from this point on until the day of Ashura, and then up until Arba'in, if we take it, all of it in its entirety, you find that the only reason why Imam Hussein alayhi salam did what he did was to save Islam from the kinds of doctrine that Yazid was going to bring forth. This azadari, these 2 months of investments of those who ascribe themselves as lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, is basically the heartbeat of Shiaism. If you remove azadari, or if you take azadari lightly, the doctrines of Islam will become corrupt. It is because the noise of the matam, the noise that we make when we cry and lament over Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it is because we go in the millions walking from Najaf to Karbala, walking from Basra to Karbala, walking from Baghdad to Karbala during Arba'in. It is because of this noise that we make across the world. Today, this azadari becomes the protection of the Islam of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm saying this in a very important way. No wonder those of us who engage and participate in azadari are considered as the protectors of Islam for eternity. Because I can guarantee you one thing, in this period of 1400 years that have passed, if azadari would have stopped, you and I would not be sitting here as lovers of Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. And the sawab and the reward that we get from doing this azadari is the sawab that is completely associated with us involved with Imam Hussain alayhi salam to try and save Islam of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And you cannot underestimate this power, my dear brothers and sisters. Why I say this is because Muharram is not about the 9th day and the Ashura day only. Muharram is not about the julus only. Muharram is not about the things that we do during this, the ritualistic we call it, during these 2 months that we do. Muharram is every day, my dear brothers and sisters. Ashura is every day. There is a saying, every land is Karbala, every day is Ashura. You and I have to have this mindset all the time when we are moving around. Because he stood up against the most powerful person in the Muslim empire at that time, willing to give up his life for the sake of saving the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's Imam Hussain. And that is why our connection, this is this crying. We cry when we see a sad scene in a movie. That's not the crying that's involved in the crying for Imam Hussain. When we see a sad scene, well, forget about that. We see a cartoon, the Disney movie, Bambi, when the little deer dies. It's a cartoon, it's not even a real thing. You find little kids crying because why? The little baby was separated from its mother. We cry. So tears, in that sense, are a hell of a lot cheaper than the tears that you and I shed for the sake of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. That tear, there is a saying for Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That tear, even if it is the size of the wing of a fly. You see the fly buzzing around? And you go and you see how small that wing is, that of the fly. It says, if your tear, even if it is that small, that you are shedding for your love for Imam Hussain, for the love of Islam, for the love of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Imam Hussain alayhi salam, that tear can be the cause of your shafa'ah on the day of judgment. This is a hadith from Imam Raza alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam in Medina now has made the decision to leave and go towards Makkah. The story begins from here. And when the first sad, tragic event that you and I, it should bother us, it should hurt us, when Imam Hussain alayhi salam goes to the grave of his grandfather. Ya Rasulullah, I am leaving your city. I don't think I'm going to come back again. Ya Rasulullah, my grandfather, look at what these people have asked me to do. He bids farewell to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, there is narration that says that he lost consciousness on the grave of Rasulullah because Abu Abdullah loved Medina so much because it was the city of his grandmother. It was his grandfather. And the next tragic scene, my dear brothers and sisters, our Imam goes to the grave of his mother, Fatima Zahra, salamullah. Oh, my dear mother, I'm leaving Medina. I'm leaving Medina not to return again. My dear mother, this Hussein has come to your grave to say his last salams to you. This is the last time I'm coming to your grave because I'm leaving Medina. And while living, I am living with your daughter Zainab and Kulsum and your granddaughter Ruqayya and Sakina. And I'm taking the family with me. Oh, my mother. He may have asked, I don't know. Just like any son would ask, oh, my dear mother, pray for me. Pray for my health. Pray for my safety. It is said that Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha in many narrations said that she, when Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam left Medina, her ruh, her spirit, traveled with Imam Hussein during the entire trip. Even on the night of Ashura, there are narrations that say that Fatima Zahra was sweeping the ground where she had predicted that her beloved son was going to be martyred. If Fatima Zahra never left the side of Imam Hussein alayhi salam during this tragic period. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let us raise our hands and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create guidance for us to understand the mission of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and for us to be able to follow the message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and to keep this message alive. My dear brothers and sisters, consider this as the responsibility of every single one of us that's sitting here, that we are going to take the banner of Hussein alayhi salam until the day of judgment. We're going to pass it from generation to generation, and we will never let the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam ever die, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad matam Hussein.
Let's gather for a few moments here, do matam before Maghrib, and inshallah after that we'll have namaz. برادرایی که میخوان یک چند لحظه عزاداری کنیم پیش بیاین تا وقتی که نماز شروع میشه یک چند لحظه سینه زنی و بعد از انشالله نماز است. بر محمد و اهل بیت محمد صلوات.
باز محرم رسید ماه عزای حسین، سینه ما می شود کرب و بلای حسین. حلال جمیع مشکلات است حسین، شوینده لوح سیئات است حسین. ای شیعه تو را چه غم ز طوفان بلا، جایی که سفینتون نجات است حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین، 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 حسین حسین یا حسین. باز محرم رسید، باز محرم رسید، ماه عزای حسین، سینه ما می شود کرب و بلای حسین. کاش خدا قسمتم، کاش خدا قسمتم رزق حلالی کند تا که توانم کنم خرج عزای حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین 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 یا حسین، حسین حسین. کاش که ترکم شود غفلت و جرم و گناه، کاش که ترکم شود غفلت و جرم و گناه، تا که بگیرم صفا من ز صفای حسین. ارکی عزادار اوست، شیعه و غمخوار اوست، ناله او میدهد سوز صدای حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین. مادر و فاطمه خوب دعاگو بود، مادر و فاطمه خوب دعاگو بود، هر که بریزد ز چشم اشک برای حسین. اشک عطای خداست، اشک عطای خداست، هدیه خیر النساست، نیست کسی لایقش غیر گدای حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین. حسین حسین. ماه محرم کند جامعه را زیر رو، ماه محرم کند جامعه را زیر رو، جمله جوانان شود مست ولای حسین. بهتر از این گریه ها، بهتر از این گریه ها، نیست صلاحی به دست تا که بماند بپا دین خدای حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین یا حسین، حسین 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 یا حسین، حسین. باز محرم رسید ماه عزای حسین، باز محرم رسید ماه عزای حسین، سینه ما می شود کرب و بلای حسین. کاش خدا قسمتم، کاش خدا قسمتم رزق حلالی کند تا که توانم کنم خرچ عزای حسین. حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین، حسین حسین یا حسین. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
تعجیل در فرج آقای امام زمان بار دیگر صلوات. سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه.
سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، یاد کربلای تو یا حسین.
ابن فاطمه اشک ما نثار تو میچکد به پای تو، اشک ما نثار تو میچکد به پای تو، زیر لب ثنای تو روی لب نوای تو. شاه محترم صاحب کرم، شاه محترم صاحب کرم، جان ما فدای تو ابن فاطمه. سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه.
یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه. سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه.
داغ عشق تو روی سینه ها شده، داغ عشق تو روی سینه ها شده، سهم ما غم تو سهم تو بلا شده، سهم ما غم تو سهم تو بلا شده. اشک ماتمت ناله غمت، اشک ماتمت ناله غمت، وقف روزه های تو ابن فاطمه. سینه میزنم
گریه میکنم، سینه میزنم گریه میکنم، در عزای تو ابن فاطمه.
یاد کربلای تو،
یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه. سینه میزنم گریه میکنم،
یاد
کربلای تو ابن فاطمه.
روی نیزه راست تو رو بروی خواهرت، روی نیزه راست تو رو بروی خواهرت، پای نیزه میزند سینه در برابرت. سر شکسته و دل شکسته تر سر شکسته و دل شکسته تر گیرد از برای تو ابن فاطمه سینه میزنم گریه میکنم سینه میزنم گریه میکنم یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه
یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه سینه میزنم گریه میکنم یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه
مای هاشمی نسب میزند تو را صدا مای هاشمی نسب میزند تو را صدا ای عزیز فاطمه سوی القمه بیا بی برادری خم نموده است بی برادری خم نموده است قامت رسای تو ابن فاطمه سینه میزنم گریه میکنم
سینه میزنم گریه میکنم یاد کربلای تو ابن فاطمه
صلوات محمدی
برای سلامتی آقا امام زمان صلوات بلندتر.
اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
به نور پاک یزدان کوفم یا حسین جان حسین حسین جان حسین 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 جان حسین 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 جان حسین
حسین حسین جان حسین.
ای نور چشم زهرا ای نور چشم زهرا بشنو سلام مسلم بگذر ز شهر کوفه باشد پیام مسلم به نور پاک یزدان کوفه یا حسین جان حسین حسین جان حسین 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 جان حسین حسین حسین
جان حسین 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 جان حسین
حسین حسین
جان
جان
حسین 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 جان حسین.
کوفی بعد و پیمان رسم وفا ندارد کوفی بعد و پیمان رسم وفا ندارد از اهل بیت قرآن شرم و حیا ندارد از اهل بیت قرآن شرم و حیا ندارد به نور پاک یزدان کوفه یا حسین جان حسین حسین جان حسین حسین حسین
جان حسین 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 جان حسین حسین حسین
جان حسین 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 جان حسین حسین حسین
جان
حسین
حسین.
بام به جفا گشودن میثاق خود شکستن بام به جفا گشودن میثاق خود شکستن سر از تنم بریدن دست مرا ببستن سر از تنم بریدن دست مرا ببستن به نور پاک یزدان کوفه یا حسین جان حسین حسین جان حسین 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 جان حسین
حسین حسین جان حسین 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 جان حسین.
چون بود شناسی جرم و گناه مسلم چون بود شناسی جرم گناه مسلم دارالاماره کفر شد قتل گاه مسلم به نور پاک یزدان کوفه یا حسین جان حسین حسین جان حسین 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 جان حسین حسین
حسین جان حسین حسین حسین
صلوات
جان
محمدی.
حسین. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله